Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of a Shabbat teaching with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz.
I want to talk a little bit about a very, on the surface level, simple way of looking at this parsha. One aspect of this parsha are the scouts, the spies, and the other aspect is the third paragraph of the Shema, which you heard Mark read just a few moments ago. Both of those scenes, let's call them, use the same word, and one we say means scouting or spying, and the other one seems to mean some kind of scene. So before I pass out this piece of paper, because as soon as I do, then you all look at all the answers, I'm just curious, what do you make of that? If one word can mean scouting, and the other word can mean to look at, or to follow, or to somehow kind of glance at, what is the Torah trying to tell us if we're using the same word for those two different narratives?
What's the Hebrew word?
Taturu. So latur is to literally tour, right, like the English word, and taturu is to glance at or to follow. Yeah, Justin.
Just to clarify, so you said in one sense it's to scout, and in the other it's to see or to take in?
To see or to follow, yeah.
So to me, that it seems that even one word or one action can have completely different meanings or effects depending on the intentionality you have.
Great.
So scouting, you're looking ahead, you're taking an active,
Great.
proactive action.
Yeah.
The other meaning, you're receiving, you're being receptive.
Amazing. Okay, so I don't know if you all heard, because thank goodness it's freezing in here, but that means that the air conditioning is very loud. What Justin's saying is that there's intentionality, right? One is looking out and one is almost receiving in, right? So the scouts are looking out to look at the land, and with the tzitzit, you're looking in. You're kind of reflecting in what's this thing that I'm seeing and then looking inward. Beautiful. Yeah.
We just sort of kind of like add to that. It feels like there's like an outer landscape and an inner landscape. We're
Great.
To look at tzitzit to remember, but
Great.
Like sort of we're navigating our inner thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, great. So maybe the landscape is even different, right? Looking out at the land versus looking at something that's supposed to remind us of something that we're supposed to be doing, whether internally to ourselves or internally to our tradition, et cetera, et cetera. Great, Marshall.
Well, I think at a basic level, it just means that one has to understand a word always in context.
Okay, great. So Marshall's reminding us that even if the word might mean the same thing out of context, that we have to be able to read within the context what that word might be telling us about the narrative. Any other thoughts on just this word before I pass out the sheets? Okay, great. Last week we didn't have enough sheets. This week we're going to have too many sheets. At some point we'll get it right. Next week it'll be like the three little bears, pigs, bears.
The three real big.
Three bears.
Bears, right? It's bears. Okay.
Yeah,
bears. It's been a long time, but okay. I was pretty sure it was bears. Okay. So we're going to look at three different passages from the Torah. Two of them are from Numbers 13, from Bamidbar 13, and one of them is from Bamidbar 15. I actually believe that Mark read both. No, he didn't. Okay. So this first part here we didn't hear earlier today, and this is about the scouts. This is at the beginning of the Parsha. The reason that it's called Shlach Lecha is because they're being sent out, which, by the way, a whole other drash that I was thinking about is Shlach Lecha versus Lech Lecha. We can talk about that another time. But then the part that we did read with Mark is this part with the Shema later on in Numbers 15. So we're just going to go through the first passage here on the first page. Everybody have one that wants one? Great. There definitely are enough.
Covered?
I think Larry needs one. No? Everybody got one? Okay. Vayishlach otam Moshe latur et Eretz Canaan. So Moses sent them out to tour, to scout the land of Canaan. Latour, the reason that you're hearing it mean to tour is literally that's what it means. Even though the English word and the Hebrew really have nothing to do with one another, they weren't influenced by one another. Latour means to scout or to tour around or to see in that kind of way, the land of Canaan. Vayomer alehem aluze ba'negev va'alitem et ahar. Go up there into the Negev, into the desert, and on into the hill country, really just the mountain. Ureitem et haaretz mahi ve'et ha'am hayoshev aleha hechazak hu harafeh hame'at hu imrav. Yabetz Dverin read this at his bar mitzvah on Thursday morning, which is why as I was reading, I was like, why do I know the tropes for this? That's why. And so the second sentence here, verse 18, we see ureitem. Now you can see that it's bolded because that word and latour mean actually the same thing in terms of being synonyms, but they are different words, right? Latour means to somehow tour out or scout out, and reitem means to just see, right? If I see someone, I just use that word, not the latour word. I don't talk about seeing someone with a scouting out type glance. So you should see what kind of country this is, and are there people who are dwelling in it, and are they strong or weak? Are they few or many? Now we know where the story goes, how they end up being seen and how they end up being categorized, so to speak, in the land. But we're just going to focus on these two words, latour and reitem. Okay, so they're being used in similar ways, but to mean very different things. The second passage here is going to use the same words again, and I'm going to ask you at the end, why are these two words being used? Why not just use one? So think about that as a framing. V'yotziu divat haaretz. I don't think that's... Oh yeah. Divat haaretz asher taru ota el bnei Yisrael lemor haaretz asher avarnu ba latur ota eretz ochelet yoshvea hi. I'm just going to stop there. So they spread this evil report. They said some nasty things amongst the Israelites about the land that they had scouted. Interesting that it doesn't say that they had seen, right? That they had scouted, saying the country that we traversed and that we scouted is one that devours its settlers. Okay, so this is obviously a way of seeing something that is not literally happening, but the way in which they're experiencing what is going on in the land. This is how they're reporting it back. And all of the people that we saw in it are of great size. So the people are not scouted out. The people are seen, but the land is being scouted. Okay? Vesham ra'inu et hanefilim b'nei anak min hanefilim v'nehi be'einenu kechagavim v'chen hayinu be'eineihem. And there we saw that these giants are there. The Anakites are part of the Nephilim, and in our eyes, in be'einenu, in our eyes, we seemed as grasshoppers to ourselves. And so we must have seemed so in their eyes. First of all, we could do a whole class teaching drash. What does it mean that we saw ourselves as grasshoppers before we were actually categorized as being seen as grasshoppers? But we're not going to go there today. So what's this? Why are we using latour and reitem in these two different ways? Josh?
Reitem, it seems to be when you see something, it's the filter that you're bringing into reality that you're scouting.
Fascinating. Okay. So scouting seems to be that you come, you see something. Reitem, to kind of go back to what Justin was saying before, there seems to be some kind of intentionality behind what you've seen and then giving a narrative over to that which you've seen. There's a filter, Josh said, around the scene that you've done. Any other thoughts of these two different words being used? Yeah.
Think about when you do like a Google search and you get a bunch of responses and you're scrolling through the responses, but you're not going to read them, and then you pick up one and then you read it.
Very nice. Okay, so Tyson said that this reminds him of Google, as it should for everybody. And when you Google something, right, when you search for something, you see lots of different responses, but you only click on the one that's going to be useful to you. Now, the way that we could actually think about that, and I did not think of Google, but the way that we can actually think about that is that then, to go back to Josh's point, the people are choosing what they want to read or see, right? And that's the reitem versus the scout scouting is just taking it in, right? So if someone came into this room, counted how many people were in this room, and left and said, and there were this many people wearing talitot, and then there were this many people feeding babies, and right, like those would be facts. Whereas if someone came into this room and just shared a narrative about what was happening in here, that's based off of what they want to see or what they want to report out. Great, I love that analogy. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Paula.
You didn't focus on this, but they're going out to Latour,
Yeah.
a land, Ota Eretz, Ocheret, Yoshbeha. Land devoured. They make this assumption. The land is devouring its inhabitants.
Right.
And that, gee, could that be happening today?
Sure. Right. So you're right that I didn't focus on that verse, but this idea that maybe this scouting is going out and seeing something that really is terrible, and could that be something that when we go and see a land, or that when we hear about a land, is happening today? Yeah, possible. Yeah.
I'm actually not saying that.
Oh, that's what I thought you said exactly.
This is this, country that Israel, right, that we love.
Yeah.
And here we have in the biblical times, before, in the times of the Israelites,
Right.
that already then we're saying it's devouring its inhabitants.
Right.
And then that, to me, is like, what does that say about Israel today, historically, biblically, that it's devouring, just so harsh.
Yeah.
Beyond harsh.
Yeah. Rabbi Losarelli. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were continuing.
That's what they're looking at. That's the fundamental premise.
Sure, we're not going to focus on that today, so I'm not going to repeat it because we're not going to focus on it. But it's definitely a way to read that piece of the text. Yeah.
I think with sort of these two words, they both involve like seeing, like to,
Yeah.
like the look and right?
Yeah.
But like one seems like it should be deeper than the other. Like the tool seems like
Okay.
it's a word that actually indicates like a pretty serious task that they're supposed to do, but it seems
Sure.
like they merely saw, or they merely actually going out and getting more information that was like deeper about the condition of the land. So it's like as if their semblance was that they just saw the surface level, they actually didn't more or less get like the deeper intelligence.
Got it. And do you think that came with the Ra'inu piece?
I think that sort of the fear came out of sort of the surface level aspect of just seeing. Saw that they were big. It's okay, well, you see that someone's big, but what do you actually know about them?
Got it. I see. Right. So what Rabbi Losarelli is pointing out is that maybe it's like Latour is a little bit too surface level. Sorry, Re'inu is too surface level, and that actually we needed to make sure that when we see something, we go deeper into not just what we think we are seeing, but what that might actually mean. Learning about the people that they might think are big, right? Knowing a bit more about what we're seeing, not just seeing it surface level. Brent, and then go.
I was going to say that you know that, at least from what Beth said, that were two people that saw that interpreted what they saw differently. So one's an interpretation.
Right.
Of what you see, and one is just seeing, like just scouting.
Uh-huh.
I think I'm following on what he said. The interpretation is everything. How you take data in and what you see.
Right.
One's an active interpretation. We all make mistakes on this. We interpret things
Sure.
based on our own experiences. But not everybody did it. Two interpreted it differently. So they saw it differently, and that seeing is everything in how you scout.
Right, so Brant is bringing up that later on there are these two other scouts, Joshua and Caleb, who come about and have a very different way of seeing what's happening in the land and have their own interpretation of then what to do because of that. Very good. Okay, Gabriela?
Well, I have to preface this by people who I know. Some years back, they decided they were going to go to San Francisco. They didn't speak the language, and they didn't know where to go.
Okay.
They went to San Francisco, they saw the worst part of it, and then immediately turned back.
Okay.
So I just want to say that if you're trying to see the land, you
Sure.
don't know what part of a land
Okay, so that's a really good point. That when you go to see something, right, even those of us who have lived in Los Angeles our whole lives haven't necessarily seen every part of our city. So when you say we're going to scout something, that might be very different than the parts that you've actually seen, right? You might have kind of, quote, scouted out that which is going on in that city or in that land, but you might not have actually been to the places that would mean something to you, or that you could do something about, or that do have influence one way or another in terms of how you interpret that space. Okay, Ellie, and then we're going to go on.
Moshe gave them specific instructions.
Correct.
He says,
Yeah.
So I think they responded to his instructions.
Good. Okay, sure. Yes, they were given an explicit instruction, and they did follow the instruction. The instruction wasn't to go and see and feel and do. The instruction was just to go and see, right? To go. Right. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, there was a direct instruction in terms of what to see, right? And they didn't. What you're saying is that there wasn't necessarily a reason to go any deeper. They just had to, they had to know strong, weak, big, small, right? They had a direct instruction. Great. Okay, so this third passage here is the third paragraph of our Shema. We read it every day, multiple times a day. I'm not going to read in Hebrew, because we know it. But you'll see here that v'haya lechem tzitzit, they had for themselves tzitzit, fringes, ureitem oto. There's a really nice midrash, by the way, on why it says oto and not otam. We're not going to get into that. But this idea that you would see them, that you would see the tzitzit, and that's the reminder to all of the mitzvot that you're supposed to do that God has given to you, so that you do not follow velo taturu acharei levavchem ve'acharei einechem, so that you do not follow the way of your heart or the way of your mind that might be leading you astray. It's not saying don't follow your heart and your mind when it's doing good things. It's saying if your heart and your mind are going to, zonim literally means it says lustful here. We're going to go with that word. That are lustful to you, that are not so good to you. There's a not so nice word in Hebrew that uses the same word. If you know it, then you know what I'm saying. But this idea that your heart and your mind can lead you astray, not lead you necessarily always on the right path. So what the third paragraph of the Shema is reminding us is that you want to be able to see these fringes so that you remember that you are supposed to follow these mitzvot. But it takes seeing so that you don't latour, you don't kind of scout out all these other things that you might want to do based off of the lustful urges that would not be so good from your heart or from your mind. So in this case, we start with re'item and then we go to latour, right? We start with kind of the emotional inside understanding of the tzitzit, and then we talk about how scouting out, right, checking out what one minyan might be versus another, or checking out what one person might be wearing versus another, right? You're going to not necessarily know the reason why or what culturally is so different, but one might catch your eye more than the other, right? And so you might go that path, so to speak. Okay, everybody with me so far? You get these two words? All right, so in the Gemara, in Menachot 43b, so in this box at the bottom here, it says, seeing leads to memory and memory leads to action. Anybody want to interpret that in their own English? We're specifically talking about the tzitzit here. So seeing the tzitzit leads us to action, leads us to remember that we have these mitzvot to do. And then that memory of those mitzvot leads us to more action. Right? So, yeah, Ed. Yeah. Great. So I talk about this all the time, that if different people learn in different ways. If you're a visual learner and you see something in front of you that you haven't seen in a long time, it might actually jog your memory in a way that something else hasn't, right? If I hear something many times, it doesn't actually stick with me. Whereas if this source sheet came up on my desk in 3 weeks, I might not necessarily remember exactly what I said, but I'll remember this experience because I'll see something. So as to what Ed said, right, the tzitzit are supposed to be not this constant, are you doing mitzvot right now, but a reminder of there are mitzvot to do, and then actually going and doing them because you remember that they're there to be done. So in Menachot, in this passage of the Talmud, it says that their suggestion to wear tzitzit reminds us of the Shema, right? That's why it's there. Look at them and remember, right? Look at the tzitzit and remember. Look at this mitzvah and recall another mitzvah, right? The mitzvah to wear tzitzit is also a mitzvah. It's not just that wearing tzitzit is to remind us of a different mitzvah. The actual wearing of tzitzit in and of itself is a mitzvah. So doing this mitzvah reminds you of other mitzvot. Which one? Reciting the Shema. The mechanism here is simple, since tzitzit are mentioned in the third paragraph of the Shema. So the Talmud is being very kind of plain and simple. Why do you wear tzitzit? Because in the Shema it tells you that there are lots of mitzvot that you should follow. So wear tzitzit. Shabbat shalom. Right? Like, that's it. And it's not that difficult. And yet, what we know from the first passage that we read is that it's really so much bigger, not necessarily difficult, but it's so much bigger than just the Shema. Okay, turn the page.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So when I was growing up, girls did not get a
Yeah. Right.
I had a bar mitzvah. I didn't have a talit.
Right.
At that time, I couldn't have an aliyah the following year.
Sure.
I was like, you got a bar mitzvah.
Sure.
One and done.
Yeah.
And then it changed. Over
Yeah.
time. And it took me a really long time to get a talit.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, but I'm so not used to it. What
Sure.
do I do? And then my husband bought me a talit.
Hmm.
And it was like, wow. And the first time I put it on, it was like, so wonderful. Like, why didn't we all get this? You know, right? And so I see this, seeing leads to memory, memory leads to action. And it's like, I put on my talit, and I'm like, I'm back at Sinai. Boy, I belong.
Oh, that's so nice.
And I think it's a very, and so it kind of like kills me when I see girls not wearing their talit
Sure.
after their bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
It's like the boys do.
That has more to do with adolescence, I think, than anything else. But yes. Yeah.
Gender.
Yeah.
And I love, so I think that it's more than just remembering these folks.
Sure.
It's really remembering our place.
Great. And I think to add to that, I think that's part of the reason why when we, and I say this to B'nai Mitzvah kids when I'm working with them, the reason that we ask any kid of any gender to try out the mitzvot of wearing talit and tefillin during the week and a head covering of some kind is not because we need them to do it for the rest of their lives, but because this is a period in their life where if they don't try it now, when else are they going to try it, right? This is a time where they're so focused in on this. And so I think to your point, Paula, is that even if they don't do it the day after, the week after, hopefully many years later, they can then remember back to a time that either they were given their first talit or when it did mean something to them, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. We're only going to take 3 more minutes on this, so we're not going to look at all of these sources. But I just want you to see that Ibn Ezra is very aware that it doesn't actually mean to spy, it does mean to search. Right, and it's a very small difference, but spying implies a lot that searching does not. Right, searching seems to be that you're looking for something, but not necessarily in like I'm going to use the word malicious. It's not exactly what I mean, but in a way in which you're bringing back information. Right, searching can just be like back to Tyson's metaphor. Like it could just be that you're wondering about something and searching for it. But spying is really, we have this task that we need to figure out, and we might have to go around certain avenues to figure that out and bring back intel, right? And Ibn Ezra is saying it wasn't spying. It really was searching. It really was from a place of wonder, not from a place of information gathering. Okay. Go to the Chizkuni. Velo tatur acharei levavchem v'charei einechem. You must not go about after your hearts and after your eyes. Whenever you look at one of my commandments, meaning the tzitzit, you are to remember that you are my servants. This is not supposed to be like a negative servants, right? This is supposed to be just that we are, our lives through ritual and observance and spiritual connection is in servitude, right? Is in service to, is in spiritual connection to God. And we're not free to just follow our inclinations when they deviate from commandments. So the point here is actually, I think if we had to define this in one word, it would be halacha, right? The fact that there is law in Judaism and in any denomination of Judaism, right? I know in Reform Judaism, it might not be as strict as it is in conservative and definitely not as strict as it is in Orthodoxy. But there are still rules, right? There are still aspects of rules. And the fact that we have mitzvot to remind us of those rules, and we can't just kind of go about our lives without connection to our religion and connection to our spiritual lives is really a blessing, right? Sometimes we feel trapped by it, but if we can see it as a blessing, if we can see it as a directive, as opposed to a you cannot do this, you cannot do that, but rather a I get to do this, I get to feel connected to that, that's a really beautiful way of then thinking of these tzitzit as not a mandated, oh, you're not doing enough mitzvot, but rather a think about all the mitzvot you have yet to do or that you already feel connected to. The last piece that I want to look at is the Datz Kainim here. So it says ureitem oto, when you see it, meaning the fringes on your garments. Since being able to look at the tzitzit when you wear them is of the essence, garments worn only at night are not required to have such fringes attached. So nighttime clothing, back in the day and even today, does not have to have tzitzit on it, even if there are four corners. Why? Because you couldn't see them anyway. So you only have to have tzitzit on garments when you can see the tzitzit. And so for that, they only need to be daytime clothes. In today's world, it's a little bit hard to know what does that exactly mean, but pajamas, for example, don't have to have them. If you look at the fringes with the proper concentration, it is considered as if you look at the throne of God, which is supposed to look like wool dyed blue. So some people have, Nico, Rabbi Losarelli can show us, he has blue on his tzitzit. Some people have a blue fringe in their tzitzit, and this is where this interpretation is coming from. Rabbi Meir, in describing the difference between that tint of blue from all other colors, said it is because it is the closest to the blue of the horizon, which by definition is a reminder of the heaven beyond it. The sequence of 3 verbs in our verse, you will see, and you will remember, and you will do, explains the importance of this commandment and how fulfilling it will be to stimulate our heart and our eyes to be loyal to God. The one thing that I'll add to this is that I think even though you might not have blue in your tzitzit, I think what this is supposed to do is remind us that your tzitzit, I don't know if everybody knows this, but your tzitzit actually equals 613. The letters tzitzit, right, sadi yud, taf, plus the number of fringes, plus the number of knots, actually equals 613. And so when you look at your fringes, you're supposed to, I think the idea of the horizon here is beautiful in terms of color, but also the metaphor for the horizon of possibility, right? The way in which you can interpret mitzvah, the way that you can interpret being connected to something, the way that you can interpret what does it mean to have spiritual observance, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope that you take this teaching and recognize that there is intentionality between just seeing something and feeling connected to something that you're seeing. There are many things that we just see as we're walking around the world that we think about and we notice, but not that actually influences us. And I hope that you're able to really take in this idea, especially of tzitzit, but of anything that is ritual and important to you, that when you see it, you think of something important to you. And it could be your bat mitzvah, and it could be a person who gave it to you, and it could be something that you do with it, but that we recognize that seeing is important, that you're not just looking, but actually seeing something and feeling something for that which we are seeing.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.